Okay, well, this is exciting tonight. We've got, I'm gonna, Julia's gonna formally introduce Dennis, but as Diana said, she gardens, lots of us garden, and I knew Dennis was, coming on, and granted, these are, these are for vegetable seeds. And I know you're going to be talking about flowers, but just last Sunday before last, I was out there planting, and you put these little seeds in your hand and you start to sow them. And really, until I thought about you coming on to this presentation, I don't really know that I've given seeds as much credit as I should have given them. Like, where do they come from? What's the story? How did they get into these little packages? And, and just how do we get them every year in these little packages? So it's really something that I think a lot of us are interested in, and just so glad that you're with us. And Julia, I just really appreciate you getting Dennis to us. And I'm going to turn the program over to you to do a formal introduction for Dennis so that he can get started.
Okay, well, I hope that most of this is factual, because I took what Dennis sent me and then I embellished some of it. So Dennis Miller is a member of the club I was in California, the Woodland Sunrise Club. And I'm super excited to have him and Lynn and Rick here with us today. Dennis worked in the vegetable seed industry for over 40 years and then is recently retired. He's performed numerous roles within research and development department in the vegetable seed company. And he retired in 2019, just in time for COVID to shut down all your travel plans, right? At the time of his retirement, he was director of global parent seed and new product seed production in Woodland, California. He grew up in New Hebron, Illinois, with a population of 50. So going back to our rural roots, and he attended elementary school in a 3-room school and high school in the town of Robinson, Illinois, which had a population of about 7,200. So feeling right at home in McCormick here with that population. Dennis studied ornamental horticulture at the University of Illinois, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree. And during his college years, he worked part-time for the university corn breeding department and was the university chrysanthemum flower breeder. He worked for Yoder Brothers in Barberton, Ohio, and then transferred to Salinas, California, where he met his lovely wife at work in Salinas there. He developed a severe allergy to chrysanthemums and then forced him to move into working with vegetable seeds instead. And so he worked with Pedo Seed starting in the fall of 1980. He currently lives in Woodland with his wife, Ruth, of 42 years, and they have one daughter, Emily, also living in Woodland, and 2 grandsons, Wesley and Elijah. He's also obviously a member of the Woodland Sunrise Rotary Club, but he's in the Woodland Chamber Singers and has toured with this group in Europe. And I believe, Dennis, you performed at Carnegie Hall. Is that true?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I thought so. I thought I heard that the last time you talked about your musical skills. And he also plays guitar and piano and serves on 2 boards for the Woodland Dignity Health Hospital and is an elder at his church, where they just took a little vacation down to Pepperdine to have an adult camp at church at the college, which sounds super fun. I already said he's a member of our Sunrise Club. So, all right, well, that's all the stuff that I'm going to share for now until you run out of time with your program, and then you might have to sing show tunes for us. So, and is that Kenny that's just joining us? So Kenny Calhoun was a member of our club, and he also worked in the seed company. And so he's either going to heckle Dennis about his material, or he's gonna lead us astray with the wrong information. So Kenny, glad to see you too. And I'll let Dennis share his screen and take it.
Thank you, Julia.
Yes, thank you, Julia. And Kenny can, try to keep me on track, keep things accurate. Kenny was the first individual I met when I came to interview in Woodland. And so I can't think of a better human being that I did meet first. So glad to have Kenny here today. You heard my bio. All of that is true. the one thing that when I was a kid, I hung around my grandmother a lot. She was a big gardener, and we always harvested seed out of her flower garden. And I thought it was just incredible that you could make plants from those tiny little seed, and it was free. And I think the free part is what really got me. You don't get much for free. So anyway, I've been really excited about seed for a very long time. When I was in college, I went to Lompoc, California, and I worked as kind of an intern for a flower seed company called Denholm. Once I worked there and saw the inner workings, and it was a tiny little company, but they had a couple of breeders, and I thought this breeding thing was pretty cool. Plus, working with the breeders at college, so that's what I wanted to be, was a chrysanthemum breeder. You heard about my chrysanthemum debacle. Chrysanthemums produce a natural insecticide. It's called pyrethrums from their foliage, and so I was getting obviously handling foliage all the time, getting pollen in my eye. Who knows how I did that? But anyway, I started having an allergic reaction where I was swelling up, couldn't see, and passing out. So it was a real trigger to change my career.
But
So
Dennis, I bet you never had fleas, right?
I don't recall ever having fleas. No.
That is one of the main ingredients in all of our flea stuff. And so now you guys know that your pets, chrysanthemums are the reason why we don't have a flea problem.
So that was my introduction into vegetable seed. It was a career change that took me to Woodland. So I'll try to explain what it is that we did and how long it took to do that, and Kenny can keep me accurate here. So what I did was called parent seed, and that's the inbred lines that the breeders created to make hybrids. Now, hybrids are a cross between two unlike germplasm pools. So and so the breeders would have to keep those pools separate because they wouldn't get any hybrid vigor if they were all the same. So that's part of the breeding portion of this. The breeders then would hand off highly likely commercial products and their parents off to my department, not necessarily the hybrids, but the parents, to start building up that seed in case that was something that eventually became a commercial product. To give you an idea about the time frame, from the first time the breeder made a test cross, usually from one plant to another plant to commercial production, it took about 10 years. Sometimes longer. And the cost way back when was about $100,000. I would imagine it's double or triple that by now. But that was how the business worked, and my portion of it was the parent seed in between two huge groups, the breeding group and the supply chain group. See if I can advance. Uh-oh. Okay, how do I advance? Well, we didn't try that.
Lene, you're muted.
Okay. Well, so this is not the slide I wanted to move to.
Dennis, if you put your cursor down in the lower left-hand side,
Yeah.
It barely lights up.
I see it. I see it. Okay. So this slide is to give you a little bit of the history of the pedo seed group that I started with back in 1980. And by the way, Pedo Seed was a sister company to the flower seed company that I worked for in my summer of my junior year in college. So these people knew each other. So when I needed a job and I reached out to the vegetable seed people at Peto Seed, basically they already knew me because I'd worked for their counterparts in the flower seed. I hope that was a good thing. Anyway, it got me the job and got my foot in the door. So the history of vegetable seed companies over the last 40 years has been quite interesting. You almost need a family tree to try to figure out who came from where and what groups merged. So this slide is trying to do that. So the different colors represent a different time frame or a different leadership within the seed business. So I started with Peto Seed, which was basically came out of Ventura, California, and then moved to Woodland as the research site. And then Peto Seed bought a company out of Salinas, Royal Sluice, and they basically did lettuce, whereas we did all kinds of crops, but we focused on tomatoes and peppers. At the same time, we had our direct competition was Asgrow Seed, and so they also had a division that produced open field crops, tomatoes, peppers. So Peto Seed and Asgrow were direct competitors, and then basically Royal Sluice and Brunsma were competitors, and that represented the glass house industry, which was in Europe. So, and I can't tell you what year it was, but we had Seminas came in, and it was a group out of Mexico that bought the Peto Seed side and the Asgrow side, and they put us together and called us Seminas. I can't tell you the complications that ensued because of a totally different mindset of culture, how to do business, not to mention the fact that we really didn't like each other because we'd been competitors for so long. That then went for probably 15 years or so, and then Seminas was purchased by Monsanto. And then Monsanto ended up purchasing Seminas seed, Western seed, which was from Europe. Horticeras was a seed company out of Portugal. Piotech, I believe, was in Italy. KFT was in Hungary. Hungnong was a Korean company. Poloni was Italian. De Ruyter came from Holland. Sasia and Emergent both came from India. And Chunyang was also a Korean company. A few years ago, Bayer then purchased Monsanto. So that's where we are today. So my job was taking care of all these parents. And so what I had to do was every time we added another company and more breeders and more crops, my job was to go in and secure the parent seed for what they were selling so that we could continue to produce it and sell it. I can't tell you how interesting it was, but I can tell you how challenging it was. My Portuguese was not good. My Italian wasn't good. My Korean was horrible. And so, trying to look through records when everything's written in the Korean language and everybody speaks Korean, it was quite interesting. But I was
Yes, Dennis.
Yes. Go, Kenny.
One thing you're glazing over. One thing you're glazing over a little bit is every company has 100 varieties. 500 varieties. And every one of those varieties, you're in charge of producing those parents. So when they stretched out to, what is it, 10 companies, Dennis was in charge of, I don't even know how many parents. A huge task to keep everything pure. Done.
You're very kind, Kenny, and that's true. I mean, once a company like Monsanto buys a seed company, they're pretty adamant that whatever sales were occurring when they bought that company should continue. And that meant that I had to find the parents for these and make sure that we had enough seed. It had all the right qualifications to do that. So Kenny's right. There was thousands and thousands of these different parents that we had to keep track of. Let's see. I know how to advance now. Oh, I went the wrong way. So the other part of what the parent seed work is that we kept seed of everything that a breeder gave us in a seed bank. And so, if you figure that, an individual cross was having to compete with 20, 30, 40 other crosses, then you start adding up all those parents, and this gets to be a really big piece of gum and trying to keep those. So you may ask the question, why is it important to keep those parents? Well, it's kind of like the seed banks that you've heard about in, I think it's in Finland, and there's one in Colorado Springs, that you never know when you're going to need a certain disease resistance or a characteristic like flavor or taste, disease resistance that you might need to go back to. And so having that seed bank in my department, then we could pull those out for different breeders when it was necessary. But we also had to make sure that the parent seed was high quality. Well, what is in play for quality of vegetable seed? Well, there's the germination percentage. How many seed come up out of the 100 that you plant? Also, the vigor of that seed. They might come up, but they might die within 3 days. So you had to have enough vigor in that seed so that it would be able to produce a crop later on. We had requirements in seed health, that there are diseases that are carried through the seed. And so we had to make sure that everything we produced, of course, did not have those diseases. We gave seed to a product development group. Lots of times that was the first hybrids that we made, but there was another bucket that we supplied. We always gave seed back to the breeder of the parent that he or she had given us. Well, the reason for that is it's a second check. We want to make sure that we had the right parent, that we weren't going down the wrong road and producing something that was incorrect. In addition, we always wanted the breeder to utilize the seed that we had produced so that we had a starting point in terms of the generation of that seed. Lots of times breeders would they'd make a cross and get started on this train towards commercialization, but they might find something a little bit better in the next generation of their own parent seed increases. And so they'd start using that instead of what my group had been given, and start making two different hybrids. And so a lot of the different rules and the policies that we put into place came about because we made mistakes. That was the best way to learn, is that we would make mistakes. We also provided seed to pathology. We had parents that had specific disease resistance. So someone mentioned mold or fungus. We had seed that was resistant to those pathogens. But it was tricky because not everything was considered resistant. There was also another category that was called tolerant. Well, tolerant means it might live or it might die. Resistant means it won't be impacted. And susceptible was, of course, yeah, that disease is going to kill it. So there is a little bit of having to, you know, make judgment calls or to understand what the final product was going to need. We also utilized molecular markers, just like they do on CSI shows. We were able to take the seed, sometimes grind it up, and then pull out, you know, the markers that that identified that seed. Most of the time, though, it was from plant tissue. And the reason that's important is because it always gave us something to go back to as a baseline, to make sure that when we had to increase more seed, that we had the right parent. So these things were really important. Another piece of what we did was we moved seed down the supply chain. So that went on into what we called stock seed. And so the parent seed, what I did primarily was foundation seed. So it was small amounts of seed. But in the stock seed portion, we talked about as things go commercial, then that triggered a different volume or a different size of seed inventory that need to be carried. So we always used the small amount of foundation seed to make the stock seed, again, to ensure that we had the right seed and we're producing the hybrid that we in fact did want to sell. But some of that small amount of seed also went into making other hybrids. We had to give seed for shipping. Some of it went to sales, not a lot, but some. And then we always had to have some to prove that we had a patent or plant variety protection on something. Just like in everything, there are criteria that, you know, ownership of the different of what you have produced. Just like in music, that you can't steal that. you have to produce it by yourself or create it by yourself. So having PVP and patents, not only did we provide seed for that, but we had an internal department that took all kinds of notes and measurements about these different parents and their hybrids so that they could be identified in case someone else came up with a new variety that went against it. Then it would be able to prove that it was in fact at that point Monsanto's property. I've talked a lot. Does anybody have any questions that I didn't make myself clear of?
Candace, do you want to ask your 2 questions that you put in the chat?
Sure.
Sure. I took these classes a very long time ago, so that's why I need to remember the answer to these. So seed saving from one crop doesn't take advantage of the hybrid vigor and the other beneficial characteristics, right? You have to keep producing the seed from the parents. Is that true?
That's correct. That's correct. If it's if you just save it, lots of times if it's coming from a hybrid, then it'll segregate wildly. It'll it'll pop out all kinds of different fruit and plant types. And so, yes, going back to those original parents and making the hybrid is actually best for the people buying it, because they get the same thing every time, and they know what they're doing. We do have some that where we do save seed from one crop to from from one, instead of making the hybrid, we just save the seed to move forward. But those are called OPs, and they're usually just not as vigorous as the hybrids. They don't have the same advantage of disease resistances that the others that the hybrids have. A lot of the hybrids that we made in it, particularly in tomatoes, every corner of the world had a different pathogen that could take out the whole crop. And so by breeding varieties that were resistant to those things, ensured that those farmers in that area would be able to produce a crop that they could sell. So that's a good question.
Yeah. And I had one more, and then I'll get out of everybody's way. But a lot of these seeds or vegetables that are billed as heirloom, are they produced as a result of hybridization, or are they just handed down from wild seed?
Yeah, they're the ones that are handed down from generation of people to generation of people. These are good. Lots of times they're better tasting, but they're not the result of hybrids. They're selection after selection after selection after selection, and so if you happen to select the wrong direction, you could lose the whole thing. But the people that have taken over the I don't know, not control, but ownership of these heirlooms are doing a really good job of increasing those to where they have the same characteristics all the time. The problem is with the heirloom ones, they're not always that vigorous. They have a lot of disease problems, and it's hard to make seed on those. I no longer grow any vegetables in my yard. I've grown enough vegetables, but when I did, I tried to grow some of the heirlooms, and I failed because of some disease that came in and just wiped them out. So your question's a good one. Heirlooms is not a hybrid, but we can go online and purchase seed from people that that do this as a living, and it's really good. They've done a good job. It's just you have to be careful which ones you choose, what area you're in, and to make sure that you're successful.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Dennis, thank you for that presentation. It's a part of the growing world that I've really never been exposed to. Just to put things in perspective, I'm a retired architect, grew up in Southern California. My first experience with anything growing was when my mother took me to Exposition Park, because every year they cut the roses and they gave the cuttings away to whoever showed up. And so my first experience of growing things was from a cutting.
Okay.
So you're talking about seeds, and now I'm realizing what percentage of the world grows from seed and what percentage grows from cuttings, or a cutting from a root, or any other type of growth other than seeds.
Great question. So we use cuttings today for some crops. So like the chrysanthemum that I talked about earlier, everything was done from a cutting because the genetics are so terribly complicated that they don't breed true. So even if you did save the seed and use the best techniques available, you're probably going to lose what you originally had. So roses are fit into that category. A lot of the brassicas like cabbage and cauliflower and broccoli, especially in Europe, a lot of those are done not by cuttings, but by tissue culture, to where cells are increased and then use different hormones to force those cells to make a little plant. Takes a long time, but it makes sure that you get the parent that you're working towards. The problem is when you get to a scale that is just way beyond what you can do with cuttings. And so with broccoli and cauliflower, you can imagine how much broccoli and cauliflower are grown throughout the world. You have to make a switch at some point from the cuttings or tissue culture, then to seed, so that you can scale that up and make seed to sell to the different farmers. Great question.
That's great, thanks. I've
Great
one
question.
more question. What percentage of seeds are for the purpose of growing food versus non-food, such as flowers?
Oh, I think, I don't know the answer. We should go ask that with the artificial intelligence.
I will do that.
Let's see what they come up with.
Just call it AI.
Yes, AI. So as you heard, I was in flowers to begin with, and in the late 70s, we had gas shortages and all kinds of things, and that's when I became allergic to chrysanthemums. And I thought to myself, rather than get another flower job, maybe I ought to move to food. But that might be a more strategic pathway for my career, which I did. There's not a lot of flower breeders. Most of them are either in California or in Europe. I'm going to say 90% is for food and 10% maybe for flowers. But don't forget, we also have fibers too. So we use seed to produce cotton. We use seed to produce wheat and rice and different things like that. So all those are connected.
Sure, great, thank you.
So here's a little bit, and I don't know how long I've been talking. So when I hit and I had my phone out and I was going to hit the stopwatch, and I got excited and started talking and didn't do that.
You're good. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So this part is about the crops, the different crops that we grew. And if you remember, the government came out with a proposal that we eat the rainbow so that we get a proper nutrition. So when Monsanto purchased Feminist, we were selling 62 crops. And that was probably about 42 too many, because it spread out our focus and our resources, and it wasn't giving us the bang for the buck that we were looking for. So the crops that you see here are the main ones, and I tried to put them in different colors based on the family that they are part of. So for the tomato, the pepper, tomatillo, and eggplant, those are all from the solanum family. And then we move to the cucurbits, where we get the watermelon, melon, pumpkin. When we went to India, we picked up some very strange crops like bitter gourd, sponge gourd, ridge gourd. those were difficult to learn to grow and to produce seed on. We also had onions and carrots, beets and leek. We had beans, peas, sweet corn, okra, believe it or not, okra, and then cabbage, kohlrabi, kailan, Brussels sprouts, daikon. And then on the other side, the leafy vegetables, spinach, lettuce, endive, arugula. Palak is Indian spinach, coriander, perilla. I had to throw that in there. It's the leaf that is used in Korean cuisine when you have Korean barbecue and you wrap the meat and the other things into a leaf. That's the perilla. We really were making seed for the world to eat. I mean, we touched every almost every corner of the world. For myself, since I was in charge of this team, I got to travel to a lot of different places where we were producing the parent seed that I described before. And so in Korea, Guatemala, Israel, Thailand, Chile, Spain, Brazil, India, Turkey, Italy, France, the Netherlands, China, Florida, and Idaho. Those, I shouldn't actually call those foreign countries. That's not appropriate. So sorry about that, Florida and Idaho. But you know, I got to meet a lot of different people, and you talk about learning to grow crops in different conditions. So we had a saying that we go by that the way a plant looks is a combination of its genetics and its environment. And so that was absolutely true, because I'll take an okra thing, for example. We had an okra that we produced in India, and the parents looked fine, but then they were switching them back and forth between, I'll call it winter season and summer season. And in the winter season, everything looked uniform, everything was fine. But when you went to the summer season, all of a sudden it started having red leaf plants and green leaf plants. And so I got a call in Woodland that was explaining that, you know, this is a problem. What are you guys doing? your seed lines aren't fixed. And I said, you know, frankly, I don't believe this. This looked pretty good. It fit all the rest of the criteria. So I traveled to India and went to the field where this was being grown. And sure enough, yeah, it was very obvious. So it was the same seed, but a different environment, cool temperatures, short days versus hot, very hot temperatures, high humidity, and long days, made the plant act totally different. So we had to fix that line, and I'm proud to say that the team did. We used a different approach to it because we were already selling the hybrid, so we had to continue. But we took some elite, what we'll call elite seed lots, and not so elite seed lots to fix it. It's kind of like fixing the plane while you're flying it. So that was always fun. Here's some pictures. This is greenhouses in Spain. The reason I know it's Spain is because there's sand they're using sand as soil. So there's a portion of Spain that if you fly over it, it looks like a sea of plastic. And this portion of Spain is providing vegetables for all the Northern European crops during the winter season. So there's a lot of veggies being trucked out of this area. And as you can see, they're actually beautiful, a lot of production per plant. I don't know if you can see it or not, but what they do is as the plant gets taller and taller, they lower it and prune off the bottom of the stem, and they start either wrapping it in circles, or it goes to the left and they make it turn a corner and go back to the right, to where they just keep raising the portion of where the fruit's going to be produced. And they can actually use the same plants and harvest from for over a year by doing this method. And believe me, the farmers want production. This is what's making them money. So if it's not working, it's a big problem. Well, I didn't want to use the high. Well, there's the next one. So this is in Holland. Also beautiful, but everything's done on plastic. And these aren't grown in soil. They're grown in, and I'm going to call it styrofoam. So all the nutrients are, I don't know if you can see the little white block at the base of those plants, but all the nutrients are being pumped in through that styrofoam and able to produce plants this big and support that many fruit. So the rails on the bottom here in the middle have a twofold purpose. Anybody want to take a guess what the purpose of those rails are for?
I'm going to guess a little train goes through when you ride on it.
That's very good, Julia.
A little tomato trolley, right?
Pretty much, yeah. So the people that harvest will sit in a little trolley and move themselves down the track and pick the different tomatoes. The other thing is that these are the heating elements. This is hot water is being pushed through these. So in the wintertime, it also acts as the heat. Here's some peppers, so what's the difference between a red pepper and a yellow pepper and a green pepper? Anybody want to take a guess?
Being patient.
Very good. Julia, you're on it. You're on fire. So everybody starts off as a green pepper. As they age, then they either turn yellow or red, but we also have orange, we have purple, we had a chocolate colored one. They weren't that they weren't that popular, but the thing about the red peppers here, these are perfect, by the way. These show exactly what the farmers want. And so lots of times you'll see a pepper that has tiny little cracks on it, usually vertical cracks. Well, that happens when they age, and if you vary the water supply, then those cells shrink. If they're a little too dry, and then when they get water again, those cells expand and they burst, and they cause cracks in the pepper, which now they're not perfect anymore. So one of the breeding initiatives for Spain was to produce a variety of red pepper that did not crack. That was tough because obviously the control is not necessarily with the genetics of the seed. The control's with how it's being produced by the farmer. But as luck would have it, there are some varieties that tend to crack less than others, and those are the ones that we pushed forward into our sales.
Hey, Dennis, I'm going to
Yes.
I'm going to cut you off, although that's a lovely picture to end on. Because we're nearing the end of our time, and I just
Okay.
want to, if people have a few questions, if we can do that.
Okay. I'm going to run to the end here and show just a few pictures. Oh, this is a good story, but I can't tell it.
But Dennis, I was gonna say, I think we need to have you back because I think
Well,
there's some
I-
great stories and great pictures and just,
no,
is that
thank
your
you.
team? Is that your team there?
Yeah, this is the team. So this is worldwide. There's people here from Brazil, from Korea, from China, from Thailand, from Europe, some even from Woodland. But we had a fantastic group and all motivated and did a very good job. This is my family. They went with me to Holland, and I'm evaluating some tomatoes and peppers in a greenhouse.
That's great.
This is what I do now. I am a hobby fuchsia breeder. And if you've grown fuchsias before, you know this is not easy. So I'm hybridizing these guys. There's a little brown dot in my hand right there. That's a seed. That's the close-up. You can read my palm if you'd like. But anyway, that's what I'm doing today, and that keeps me pretty busy. Thanks for your time.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
Appreciate your attention.
Lance, it's 7 o'clock, but real quick, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Dennis, thank you so much. It's a great presentation. My question is around deer. Is there a way to produce a seed that you can plant it, and when it comes up, the deer will not eat it?
Only if it can create its own fence.
Or if it's a chrysanthemum, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. No, deer are a big problem, that's for sure.
Dennis, this has been amazingly interesting. And particularly for those of us, certainly out in California, but in our neck of the woods around here too. There's a lot of farming, and many of us come from farm families. And so I think there's a lot more that we would like to know. And so we'll generate those questions and get them to you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I just really, really, really appreciate your being here. We appreciate our guest being with us tonight. And so if you will all bear with me for, excuse me, just a second while I share my screen. Let's see.
And I think since Kenny's on here, we should say that Kenny actually took many professional photographs of the vegetables and fruits that were on the seed packets that you purchased.
Yeah.
So Kenny, I might have to hit you up for a program. And
yeah. Just remember, all seed starts with sales.
Yeah.
Not
Rotary, good fun. And Dennis, what we like to do is we like to send a book to the Little Free Library.
good.
Is a thank you to our speakers. And so this is in recognition and honor of you for your passion for ensuring that seeds are available to be sown. I mean, we can, we've got to have those seeds to produce more seeds, to sow more seeds. And you have done that for us and for the world. And so thank you so much. And thank you for sharing all of that with us tonight.